all. Welcome back to Themis and Thoth. Grab your coffee, water, tea, whatever you're drinking, go and get that. Today we're going to continue the conversation we started about beauty. Okay, let's get into it. The other day, I started a conversation about Tarana Burke. It was about the Twitter interaction she had had with a bunch of men who took her picture, reposted it, and talked about how it was unlikely that she was sexually harassed because she wasn't the type to be sexually harassed, as if being quote unquote traditionally beautiful in their mind and therefore being eligible for some kind of harassment is a good thing. And also that if you don't fit certain beauty standards, the likelihood of being protected, being thought about, being cared for diminishes because you're not the type. The ways in which men interacted with her pictures talk about how she was not beautiful, that she's likely lying because no one would want to sexually harass her looking like that was embarrassing, it was disgraceful, and fundamentally, it spoke to the fact that we have a culture that allows this kind of degeneracy to be spoken with ease. That's the problem. So while this video is going to be about beauty, let's be clear, because I will draw on a bunch of different YouTubers and academics, and we'll talk about it. But I want to be clear upfront about my opinion on this. So when it comes to beauty, I believe there is no beauty standard that can be created where black women cannot meet it if any other race of women can meet it. The fact is, when it comes to black women, they come in all different shapes, size, skin color, hair texture, phenotypes. It is so varied that regardless of how restrictive you make the beauty standard, there will be a part of the black community that will meet it. And that's on period. And even though we can say period and cheer for that, the question isn't whether or not black women can meet the beauty standard. They can, they have, they will continue to. That is not the question. The question is, do we accept the beauty standard within our community that is forced on us by the larger community? What would that say about who we are and whether or not we have the power or capacity to create for ourselves standards within our community outside of the larger culture? I believe fundamentally, partly because I have to, but also because I do actually fundamentally believe this, that we do have the capacity to do so. I think hip hop culture is hugely influential. And if we can control that, we can control a lot of the narrative. I think with social media, we saw that we can control a bunch of the narrative. However, it is important that I point this out, that I believe the beauty standard, if it is to make any kind of sense, it has to first be accepted by us, pushed by us. And by us, I do mean men, right? One of the things that we've seen, and we'll get to this part in the conclusion, is how black women have been at the forefront of redefining and defining for themselves what beauty is and what they should value. That is the most beautiful thing that I've seen in the entire world. And we'll get to that at the conclusion of the video. So let's start with this for Harriet.
Hi.
Oh, hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I just have a few things to say. With regards to texturism, I don't know if I'm 4C, and this is a discussion a lot of South African women are having where we're like, our hair is not considered 4C. It might be much tighter, but I think my issue is also length and that being attached to, um, femininity and like, oh, okay, so if you're a woman, your hair needs to grow long and this, that, and the other. And that's like been my struggle. Ever since lockdown, it's been a struggle for me. I had to buy a hair dryer so I can do my own hair. It's been a mission. Yesterday, I was like, you know what, I'm going to get pretty and take some selfies. I blow dried my hair, then it shrunk, and I just didn't feel as confident as I did when I started. And it was just like, I don't feel as pretty. I feel like I look like a mom. And like, there's just a lot of issues around hair. So I'm wearing a wig now because I don't know who's going to be watching this, but I don't think I could show up here with my own hair because it's not long. And I think there's a lot. I mean, in terms of natural hair, there's this, like you have stated, that there's a standard. And I'm just thinking about one of your videos where you said that, beauty is a bad investment. And you were talking about how, as a woman, you don't really have a choice. You have to participate in beauty ideals because it's like projected onto you. And I think that's like just a struggle I'm facing, where it's just like, I like my hair, but at the same time, there's also unsolicited opinions where people are like, "Oh, how long is your hair now?" And so on. So, yeah, that's just basically been my struggle. With my hair.
I think you hit on so many things. I mean, after I did, the little perm rod set, I was like, I look like my mom. I look like my own mother. Also, because we have the same face, but it's like, you don't want to look like your mom, okay?
No, not at all.
Well, it's like, I love her and I appreciate it, but I'm still trying to look like young and cute and cool. And so I think that people have been saying like the hair and femininity conversation is really important because I understand that Black women have all of this stuff tied up in our femininity and the way that it's been stripped, and we've not had access to it in the way that women of other races had, because we've been, the mules or whatever, the workhorses. However, what is femininity to us? What does it mean to be feminine? What does it mean to be womanly? And if we are attaching femininity to something that we can't control, like Shafante before was saying, I don't believe that I'm ever, no matter if I took care of my hair perfectly, that it was ever going to be to my butt. I do not ever believe that.
No. I don't think mine's even going to reach my shoulders. So
right. And so if our ideal of femininity, if we can only be feminine, if we have hair that reaches shoulders or reaches mid-back, then what you are saying to a lot of Black women is you can never be that, even as a Black woman, even if we create our own ideals. And so it's like, how are we just have to teach ourselves new stuff. Like, let's not inadvertently put more shackles on Black women in trying to do something good for Black women. And I think that's what a lot of us get caught up in.
Yeah, and the problem with the natural hair community is talking about like the presentation of the hair as opposed to it being well taken care of. I think what I appreciate about my hairdresser is that she's never like tried to be like, okay, we need to grow your hair longer. She's always suggested ways in which that I can improve. And the one way is like, she said, I must buy my own shampoo to bring to the salon that's in line with the hair products that I'm using so that it's consistent and that it's, growing. And I did that. And she said my hair had improved much more. And like when she was combing it out, I wasn't losing hair and so on. So I think we also need thoughtful hairdressers and thoughtful people in the natural hair community who are talking about taking care of your hair, not presenting your hair a certain way. Because I know whenever I get my hair blown out, I come home and I do bantu knots so that it's a pretty afro and that it looks nice. I would never go to work with my natural 4C. Like people would be like, oh, okay, Sarafina type of thing, or just make really weird remarks. And you don't want to subject yourself to that. Like people will give you unsolicited opinions about your hair all the time. Why?
Having been a student for a lot of these conversations and listening to them, I am not here to try, even attempt to define femininity or womanhood. That would not be my place. In fact, I'm not even here to define beauty. I'm here to talk about observations that I've made and the idea that women are so invested in beauty, men increasingly so, is by design. Let's stop for a moment and think about men who are saying, oh, everything is geared towards women, marketing is geared towards women, they don't care about men. Let's pause on that and really think about what we're saying. Do we actually believe that the multi-billion-dollar industries that are popping up around beauty are attempting to cater to women or exploit insecurities? First, create these insecurities, then exploit these insecurities by saying we have the fix to make you better. Do you think they're catering to women, or they're exploiting an insecurity in women to make themselves money? I would say the latter. But that's not important right now. What is important is we can sit back and we can say all we want, that these kinds of conversation about hair and about feature and about dark skin versus light skin that women are having, we can pretend like they're meaningless and childish all we want, but the truth is they have consequence, and we have a responsibility as men, gay, straight, whatever, to uphold a beauty standard for the people within our community, for the women in our community. This is not to say that I lay this all at the feet of black men, but as a black man, that's where I want to talk about some issues that we have. Remember how I talked about a podcast that we began with? Let's go back to this podcast and let's dive into the conversation some more about beauty and why I think black men sit front and center in the conversation about black women's beauty and the role we have played in accepting white supremacy ideals around beauty, and how we've perpetuated to beat the women in our communities, in our families down to fit something they cannot fit in your mind, and shame them for not being white, essentially, or as close to white as one can get while still being black. So let's get into the conversation again.
I then saw another side of it. I think it was a TikTok that you posted, or a clip of you where you were kind of saying, go where the love is.
Yeah.
And that's for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I've been riding hard for black love, shouting on the rooftops. But
And I feel like when people hear me say that, everything just crumbles, because they're like, you're with a hard back Nigerian man. Like, you should be at the forefront of the protest for black love. The reality is, in my opinion, especially being a dark-skinned black woman, I wasn't waiting for no black man. Not on my watch. I don't have time. Because from a very young age, black men, in a way that I didn't ask for because I was too young, black men made it clear that I was not the kind of woman they wanted. So I went into the dating market never looking at them. Like, I'm not going to waste my time. And there were times, of course, dating outside of my race meant that I had to be very aware of fetishization. Always struggle with that word and all of those things. But solidly in my mind, I was never going to marry a black guy. It just wasn't an option, to the point that old school friends, when they find out my husband's black, they're like, "Rah, you really shocked us there." I'm like, I shocked myself too. Things happen. And I always let the internet know, God forbid body passes before his time. Don't be looking for no black replacement. Because even though I've been loved so well and I loved him so much, when I have conversations with younger women on TikTok or whatever, the dating pool, the issues around being a dark-skinned black woman are still the same. Nothing is changing. So God forbid he dies when I'm 50, 60. I'm going to jump back into that. You're mad. You're mad. So especially dark-skinned black women who in no way concede to European beauty standards, you better widen your pool. I know it's not only lovely to be in love with someone who is from the same race, it feeds you in a way that I can't explain.
Right.
Being with someone from another race or culture sometimes can be extremely exhausting, the things you have to explain. And then you may really love and get on with them. It's their family. It's their friends. It's the barriers of which surround where they come from. There's always layers to it. There is something about being with a black man that means that my shoulders are never up in my ears. I'm never tense. I'm never like on edge. I never think I have to over-explain anything, which I did always have to do when dating white men. So I know there's an ease to this love, but this ease isn't worth the fight that women that look like me have to go through to get it.
What have you been your experiences dating? Well, I know that you said you didn't even try to date back. Because what was society telling you? Because I know what my experiences were, and it's probably going to be similar.
Yeah.
Candace explains that being with a black man is ease, but she's going to go through her experience at getting there. If it is called ease, then why would it be difficult? Like, the idea that this is ease and black love is ease, when you're describing the difficulty it takes to get there, your experience with black men is a very strange thing. Still really love the interview. I will link the interview down in the description box, because I think it was a good podcast and you guys should listen to it if you so care. But we're going to get into the experiences that she went through growing up as it relates to black men, and learning about her skin tone and how they viewed her skin tone, in the way that Candace was speaking about her experience and about ease and She's going to go into how she learned she was not attractive when an older gentleman told her as she was 6 sitting on a bus. Imagine a 6-year-old sitting on the bus when an older gentleman is telling the young lady that she's ugly. She's going to describe this in a moment. This is happening in the UK, it's happening in Jamaica, it's happening all across the Caribbean, and it's happening in the US. It's not isolated, it's not an American experience. This is happening all over. This is a problem. We all recognize it's a problem. The reason I don't believe this problem is about to change in the hands of us black men is because we benefit from this problem. What do I mean by we benefit from this problem? Well, if you can blame women for their beauty or their lack of access to the beauty standard, their ranking on the beauty hierarchy, if we can say you are not beautiful enough and therefore that is why I did this instead of being faithful to you, then you always have an out. You can always blame everyone else for your bad decision. In fact, let's go back to, for Harriet, Kimberly Nicole Foster. I will also link this video in the description below. Please let me remember to link all these videos. And let's hear what she had to say and how beauty and the lack of beauty in these men's mind were used as an excuse for why men were cheating. Let's get into it. Let's do it.
They've been married for 2 decades. I mean, married since TLC was singing about Scrubs, okay? A long time. And when her husband gets caught cheating with a family friend, the conversation somehow circles back to the fact that she doesn't wear a size 4'6" anymore. Beauty is a bad investment because in a society where beauty is the primary form of capital available to women, as soon as you don't have it anymore, you're disposable. And look, this is something that my thinking has evolved on tremendously over the years. I used to be so judgy, just ridiculously judgy of women who spent so much time and energy investing themselves in it, in obtaining it, in maintaining it, and capitalizing off of it. If beauty is the first and primary form of capital that many of us know, then it is also the primary form of power that most of us have access to. It's not wrong to want to be beautiful. You get things from it, and there are consequences for not pursuing it. You know, I'll be honest, I'm over on Patreon with no makeup all the time. Shout out to the patrons, okay? But I'm not coming on here with no makeup. Most of us are going to invest in beauty in some way, but the degree of our investment differs. And I'm okay with physical attractiveness not being the center of my life because I recognize that at some point, we're all gonna get older. I mean, even Angela Bassett is gonna look her age eventually. But then what comes next? In many ways, we're at the mercy of the structural inequality that the system of beauty creates, and it is a system, that's important to note. And a lot of men recognize that, and they take advantage of it. And I do have an example. While lurking Twitter recently, I saw some outraged tweets directed at a man named Stefan Molyneux. I don't know who that is, but he has a whole lot of followers, and apparently he has a huge YouTube channel. But this is what he said. Ladies, have your babies in your 20s. Your career can wait, but 90% of your eggs are gone by the time you're 30 years old. Also, 95% of the good men. Don't squander your youth and beauty on vanity and money. It's too long a life to be old without children. The next one is reply. Generally, family is very kind to aging women. Your grandkids don't care how pretty you are. Women should use their youthful beauty to build a family. It's just that simple. You miss that boat, it sinks forever. Next one. Come on, ladies. You know this as well as I do. All the attention you get from men when you're young will dry up in your 30s, leaving you just another sagging face in a crowded cat shelter. Use your power to build a family, not for silly vanity and free drinks. Obviously, this upset a whole bunch of people, but I think more people than you think believe what Stefan believes. And of course, I don't think that women should have kids just because they're afraid of getting old and ugly. But Stefan is right that we treat aging women like shit. And people who believe what Stefan believes use that reality to try to coerce women into socially prescribed roles. I've experienced recently how the pressure kind of builds up for women once you get into your 30s. But fundamentally, this is a dignity issue and a quality of life issue for older women. Because the beauty standard is still a woman in her early 20s, maybe 25 tops. The beauty standard that we accept for all women cannot be 21. That don't make no sense. And all of this obsession with anti-aging and reverse aging and black don't crack, et cetera, means that we are constantly comparing ourselves not only to our former selves, but also to each other. And the system of beauty, the one that perpetuates inequality, forces us all to like buy into it and spend our free time chasing it and to spend our money on it because everything goes back to capitalism. A lot of us are stuck on the treadmill of body dysmorphia and unhappiness and insecurity. And like, for what? For something that is going to go no matter what you do? And I also have to say that I get that a lot of people enjoy pursuing beauty. You like makeup and you like clothes and getting dressed up and the way that it makes you feel. I get it. I also know that this performance is compulsory and it's not a real choice until you can choose to opt in or opt out and not experience serious life-altering consequences.
She said a lot, and I agree with pretty much everything in that segment that I showed you. But I think we need to take a road trip off of, well, it's still about beauty, but I think we need to talk about aging. And instead of talking about it now, let's go back in time and just play part of that live, because I think this is super important as it relates to aging, because you can't hold on to beauty forever. it's just not a thing you can do right now. So let's get into aging, because I do think this is important. I'm glad Kim brought it up, so I'm just gonna play the part. I don't have to repeat myself, so I'll just replay it. And then there is the crone, right? And I'm not calling any of these women crone because apparently that word has become really bad. This actually, in a lot of cultures, including Jamaican culture, a lot of Asian culture, the older woman is where you become the wisest. It is where wisdom lies. It's where you've experienced the world, but you can decipher good and bad, set your own standards, boundaries, expectation. You show up as fully who you are. And it's so sad to me that because of Hollywood, because of the beauty standards, because of how we have interpreted women's value in society, it seems we've accepted that the crone is something that we should not be. And by we, I mean women specifically. That women, the wise old woman, because she's not sexually enticing to the male gaze, that she is of no value. And that is absolutely sick. That is disgusting. And I wish that I am not just blaming men, by the way. I am blaming, someone said the oracle is better. I use the word crone because of the connotation with it. I feel like I don't want to make the language beautiful. I don't, the whole idea for me, and I could be wrong about this. This is me theorizing again. Disregard everything I say. Do not listen to a fruitcake about womanhood. However, I find it quite interesting and odd that we know that womanhood has to go into the crone stage or the oracle stage, but the crone stage. We know we have to get old, yet we demonize the very thing that we actually have to become. It is a privilege to be old. Like, that is a privilege. So the fact that we are saying you have no value, we are going to disregard you, age means that you're ugly and you are not useful and you have no value. The fact that we're accepting that is ridiculous. The fact that women are accepting this is ridiculous. I'm not saying don't capitalize on your youth and beauty, but don't demonize people. I clicked onto so many of the profiles under these women's posts, and I'm going to these people's profile and I'm looking at them and I'm like, why? You are a woman. Like, I don't understand how you could accept this about womanhood. Is it that they were young and beautiful and seen as sex symbols? So this is kind of a sick revenge. Like, now that they are older, you're going to let them know, oh my God, how could you old? How could you age? White people aging like milk. It must be your white side. Like, all of these comments. And I'm like, dude, we all gonna get old. Like, we're literally all gonna get old. How do you sit there? Like, actually though, how do you sit there? And I'm not saying you can't think a thought. Like, random thoughts come into mind, right? Random things you wanna say, but you know not to say. But because we're on social media, you decide to hype onto you're packing onto all of these nasty comments at people who literally did nothing to you. These people are merely existing, and you felt the need to let them know that they're getting old and they're wrinkled and no one wants. Why? What does that do for you? What does that do for you? Does it make you look better? Do you suddenly become as beautiful as they were when they were younger? Like, I don't understand that. That is mean and evil. Like, why do that? Or is it that you are realizing your own mortality, one, but that you will age and you're rejecting it? If a celebrity can't defy aging, then there is no hope for me. If a celebrity doesn't want to go under the knife and fill their face up with Botox and fillers, then what does that mean for me? Is that where it's coming from? Because I don't understand how you could be under someone's posts like this, just dragging them, and also Shade Room posting this, absolutely knowing for a fact that the people are going to just drag them. There is no reason. This lady, Vanessa Williams, was talking about how she's not going to be on a show look, ain't nobody watching that show. Let's be clear. So there was no reason for the Shade Room to post her. No reason outside of wanting to be messy and wanting these people to be dragged for how they're aging, as if this is not normal and natural. It is ridiculous to me that we're accepting this. Like, it is actually like sad that we're accepting that the maiden stage of life and even the mother stage of life, which, by the way, the mother stage isn't even that upheld, because everyone is like, oh, you're a single mother, you created life, you're doing this, you're being a boss person, you are not good, we're rejecting you. Obviously, these people want you powerless. If you define your value as youth and beauty, you have no value. let's be clear. If your only value, if you're accepting people's definition of womanhood, in my mind, I'm not saying I'm right. If you think the only value you have is your youth and beauty, I don't think you know what it means to be human. I'm not even talking about womanhood. Like I'm not even talking about being woman or man. If youth and beauty is what you believe that make someone valuable, you don't understand humanness, what it means to be a human. You have more value to the world if you're a good person, I believe. Regardless of how beautiful you are, to me, you have more value to me if you're a good person. Like, you stop accepting people's definition. Like, you have value. You can do things. You can care for people. You can love people. That is value. Sorry, it's so annoying. I would give anything to get my grandmother back. If I'm like my great grandmother living to 97, touch of dementia, a strong backhand. Yeah, like, I know for a fact that my grandmother had value, that had people who loved and care for her. And to sit here and hear people, oh, I don't want to sleep with you, you're getting old. Yes, people get old, and they're amazing and kind, and some of them aren't that kind, to be clear. But you add value. My grandmother adds so much value to me and my brother and the entire family. Like, she had a ton of value, a ton of wisdom, a ton of kindness, a ton of care. She had grace and beauty the way that I saw beauty, not the way y'all like, oh my God, do I want to sleep with her? No, not that kind of beauty, because that's not what we are talking about. That's not the only value people have. Like, when I got a long day from work or school, rather, I didn't go to when I didn't live with her when I was working. When she hugged me, it was the most beautiful, sincere. Like, there was no requirement. There was nothing. I just knew that she wanted to hug me to make me all right. Y'all just sitting up here, and no, it's not divorce. It's not just divorce from, oh, that's just one person. We're talking about whether or not I want to have a relationship. We don't care what you want to have a relationship with. No one cares who you want to have a relationship with. Like, it's tiring. Like, and it sucks because it wasn't just men under her comments talking about how they age and, oh, you look bad and you have wrinkles. Yes, they are. And what? What about it? What? They have wrinkles. Now what? You will too. If you're lucky enough. If you're lucky enough, you will have wrinkles too. If you're lucky enough. It is a privilege. It is a privilege to live till you're older. I don't know what y'all are doing. I don't know why y'all let people define. Anyone defining your value is not doing so to give you an upper hand. They're not doing so to give you power. They're most likely doing so to control you. Look, that was from a live stream that I definitely needed to get that out because it was bothering me. Bothering me the way that we're talking about aging. But again, I digress. Let's get back specifically to beauty. And again, we're using the Girls Will Be Boys podcast to frame the conversation. So let's go back to the discussion. We are at the point where we're talking about, Candace was talking about rather, how growing up, she had to experience what blackness and being a black woman would be like when a older gentleman looked at her as a child and explained to her her darkness and her beauty. Let's listen to it.
Well, I know that you said you didn't even try today, but because like, what was society telling you? Because I know what my experiences were, and it's probably going to be similar.
Yeah, I remember being on the bus when I was maybe 6 or 7, and it was really packed. So my mum and I had separate seats. She was right at the back and I was right at the front. And I remember this black man, must have been about 45, 50, with locks, leaning over me. I remember I'm 6 or 7, and he was like, "You're so ugly, you know? No man's ever gonna love you. You're so black. You're so ugly." I am 6 or 7 years old. So like I said, it's not even a conversation I'm trying to entertain. Like, I'm really sitting down reading Postman Pat, and there's a black man in the later days of his life already letting me know what the setup is going to be. Then, of course, we go to school, especially in the early secondary school days. I went to an all-girls school. There was an all-boys school nearby, and we all used to meet up at the top of Crown Point, deep in South London. And then the boys would do this layout thing where they'd order the girls in terms of beauty. And I'd always be at the bottom or near the bottom, just based on my skin tone alone. This was like the early, mid-2000s. So this is really when, I hate the word, but this is really when lighty culture or video vixenism was at its peak. And so black boys, that could have been my twin brother, were very vocal about me not being the beauty standard and them not finding me desirable.
At 6 years old, a grown man looked at this child and told her that she was ugly. How does that make sense? In what world does that make sense? How is this okay? How is this commonplace conversation? Then her experience with black men and boys around her school, putting her lower on their beauty hierarchy because of her skin tone. This is a problem. We know this is a problem, but that is not just the experience that she's having. In one of my previous live stream, the conversation came up in almost a similar way. And let's hear what happened on that live stream. Let's go back there and play that and then come back and talk.
And I was like, what about her daughter? And he was like, oh, like, she doesn't look like her. I'm like, okay. And I just stopped him right there. And I ended up having to school him in that moment about, I'm like, first of all, Blue Ivy is growing into her looks, and she's beautiful to me. She's beautiful. And nevertheless, I'm like, I find it problematic that people are so quick to want to criticize Black women's beauty. It seems like Black women, and particularly Black celebrity women, are the only ones.
I'm going to pause you right there and say, you're better than me. I'm not about to sit around and have a conversation with anyone talking about a child's looks. I'm not about to do it.
No, but I felt like it was. I felt you're right, but I felt like it was important because it's just something that is so acceptable. And one of the things that I said to him, I was like, and I tried to say this on here before or whatever, but I was trying to be nice. But I'm like, no, I'm just going to say what it is because it is what it is. Christy Brinkley, this is like an old school version, and Billy Joel, their daughter, she did not look like her mom, who was a supermodel. And Mark Anthony and Jennifer Lopez, their daughter does not look like Jennifer Lopez. And you know what I'm saying without saying it, but I don't see anybody actively in their respective communities criticizing the looks of those women, those young girls or what have you in their youth in the same way that people are so readily able and willing to attack the looks of young Black girls and even Black women by extension. It's like only our beauty is ever called into question repeatedly. Right? And I agree with you. I think Chloe is a pretty girl. I don't see what the hell that Funky Daniva is talking about, her being ugly. And it's as if like the bar for beauty as it pertains to Black women is like almost to a level that is unachievable. Where if somebody has natural Black features or fuller features, people aren't readily able to identify them as beautiful. And I think it's a problem to see how pervasive it is within a Black community that we can't even recognize beauty within our own selves, and that people are so quick to just call a Black person ugly if they're not.
Why I don't listen to these people when they talk online, talking about everyone don't deserve protection. No, you don't believe everyone deserves protection because you can provide it. Men have created systems in which the women in their group became the standard of beauty in their respective areas. And we just sat here and bought into ideas around beauty, disparaging the women in our community. So yes, right. It is easier for us to be talking about people being ugly and masculine and aggressive because we've bought into the system of power that exists. We are subjugated under it, and you are not about to change anything about it. So when Sin was talking to that man who accepted white supremacy, I understood where he was coming from, because as a wannabe, you are going to sit there and you're going to accept and you're going to critique people in your community for no reason. So yeah, I understand where it comes from. It is ridiculously reductive, and I will repeat this. I am not, for any child, I am not sitting around having a conversation with a grown person about a child's looks. I'm not doing it. I might drag you. We might have a problem. Because I'm not going to, if you bring Blue Ivy up to me, you and I are going to have a problem. You and I are going to have a problem.
And that's the thing. And that's the thing, because I purposely, because I remember when everything was happening, because everybody was participating in it too, and we allow that as well, right? And so, because it was on Twitter everywhere, like when people were initially making comments about Blue Ivy's looks, and I'm like, what the hell? And so then I purposely went to look at other couples, famous couples who are not Black, whose children objectively are not as aesthetically gorgeous in comparison to their to their mothers. And I've noticed that very seldomly is anybody making any commentary on them. They just sort of like, if they sort of adopt the code of, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all, right? But only in the Black community, only Black women's beauty, it seems to be, can be called into question at any moment. And that pisses me off.
Being Black women's self-esteem low so that everyone in the community can have access to them. And if you, it's sad because, like, I think for most communities, the women in the community, they're uplifted by the men because that's kind of what a patriarchy does and requires. And it sucks, but I'm actually quite proud that in the Black. When I say that's what a patriarchy does, I have to interrupt myself here. I'm not saying patriarchy uplifts and protects women. That's definitely not what I'm saying. I'm saying when it comes to beauty, different groups in their own patriarchy try to make the women in their community the standard of beauty for their community because it's beneficial to the men in said community to have access to the women they deem to be the most beautiful. That's what I was trying to explain, not that patriarchy uplifts women, absolutely not. So I hope that clarifies things, but let's get back to the live stream. Community, the idea of Black girl magic, that Black women are defining their own beauty. And that's so rare and weird to actually. Leaving that alone also because that's going to be included. I have to now include that in the conclusion of the video when we get to the conclusion of the video. But before we get to the conclusion of the video, let's talk for a second about the fact that it's not about you necessarily. It is that the people around you who look like you have bought into a white supremacist ideal around beauty. I am not the only one who noticed this. People in America aren't the only one who noticed this. People in the Caribbean, people in Asia, people in Jamaica, I said Caribbean, people in Africa, people in Europe, we all noticing this. This is why skin bleaching has become commonplace in a lot of culture because we notice this. So let's go back to the Girls Will Be Boys podcast to discuss it. Before we do that, I think it's important that I note we're going through all these videos because I don't want to put essays on the screen. That's the first issue. The second issue is I think it's better that we go back to videos we're already familiar with to express ideas that we want to discuss currently as opposed to just restating them over and over and over again. Just point to the fact that we've already said them and here's what we said when we said them. So that's why I'm doing it. Now, let's get into the conversation about it's not you, ma'am. It is not you, dark-skinned woman. It is not about you. It is about whiteness and people wanting access to whiteness for different kinds of reason, thinking it gives them social credibility. Those are not my words only. Those are the words of everyone who's essentially looked at the dynamics. So let's get into it.
I have to look out for in her, like, do you think you're a bit better? Like, because I can't control all the messaging. I'm not there all the time. So far, so good. We praise the Lord. Also, though, it's now having a Black son where I'm like, I can't lie. The boys before I had this boy were very shit. How do I go about being active about not standing for shit from him? And that's not to say that as his mum, I won't support, you know, whoever he loves. But I will be that voice in his ear who's like, before you even say you love them, where are these feelings coming from? I think sometimes these things aren't questioned because, and I go on record saying this a lot, so many Black men date and marry outside of their race for a social boost, for a confidence boost. And I know this to be true because I once had a conversation like this online and a white woman DM'd me and was like, Jesus, I've been married to my Black husband for like over 10 years and he constantly berates Black women to me. And she was like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't think he loves me. I think he loves what I represent in whiteness socially. And the way I just swiped it back to unread, because I said, said, girl, it's not every problem is my problem, innit?
I was gonna say that is weightier than what she just bought, what she thinks she just bought.
I was like, I can't help you. What's so interesting is I'm sure there were times that you were presented with glimmers of that before, but because it never harmed you, you didn't care to pay it any attention. You don't just wake up after 10 years and be like, oh, you know, I think he hates black women. No. You've seen that from early.
You were complicit.
But because you are the prize, you are the token in this scenario, you were willing to act unaware. And now, following this very black woman who's very vocal about these things, something in you is feeling triggered. That's not for me to unpack, because not only do I not have time for you, I defo don't have time for your man.
Me and Sky were literally having this conversation. It's like where Sky was like,
look, the message here fundamentally is, it is not you. You're not aggressive or masculine or boss lady. Every group of women is engaging in these kinds of behavior. It is your blackness. And everyone knows this, so it's time you also know this. The beauty that they're requiring is not absent in you because you are not beautiful. It's not present in you because you don't fulfill the whiteness part. It is the whiteness. The beauty these people are requiring who bought into the white supremacist ideals isn't about you really being beautiful. It's about your proximity to whiteness. That is it. That is all. That's what this video was explaining. However, I won't keep us here forever. Let's just jump to the conclusion of the video. Let's do that quickly. Here's what's happening, and I think this is really important. I am encouraged by the ways in which black women are trendsetters when it comes to culture and cultural occurrence, even when it comes to these ideas around feminism, for example. Black women have been at the forefront of self-actualization, and I don't think they're just there because they want to be there. I think they're there because of necessity. And when other groups of people look around and try to imitate black women and try to be like, they can't fully do it, and the reason why is they haven't gone through the sort of cultural experience required to develop the kind of woman who is the black woman. Right? And I think it's interesting. And when it comes to beauty and agency, I think black women, again, are ahead of other women in rejecting certain ideas around beauty in an effort to self-actualize. The podcast that we're watching together currently, we'll get into that. I will put a clip of that here after a live stream that we did. So let's go back to that live stream and let's hear what we had to say previously. See, because a lot of the things, by the way, that is happening in popular culture first took place in black communities. When people talk about feminism took them out of their house, for example, it didn't. In the black community, this was already happening. Women were providing. So now that it's catching up with the rest of the world, that's the rest of the world problem. And it's interesting that black women are actually self-actualizing. It's interesting to me to watch black women have to, on their own, define their own beauty and stand in their own beauty. That, I would say it sucks, but I actually like it because it's real and it is yours. No man gave that to you when you decided that dark skin was beautiful. No one gave that to you. You had to do that. You had to fight against all the cultural push to say, no, I don't care what you say. I know who I am and I am beautiful. That kind of ownership is something that other people don't have. They don't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that is something that I do admire about us. But I'm glad in this particular situation with Funky Dineva that black women, I'm really pleased to see that black women rose up and challenged him on that.
That kind of engagement is very important. And it's not just something that I've said or Truth Teller have said, and all the women who came on that podcast talked about that night. This was also said in the podcast, the Girls Will Be Boys podcast, when they had Candace on. Let's go there and hear what she had to say, because it seemed to be echoing the same sentiment about self-actualization through necessity, because people, men, aren't propping you up as a certain kind of dark-skinned woman. You needed to find that in yourself and be your own person and self-actualize outside of the male gaze, which does grant a certain kind of freedom, a kind of freedom that I think is beautiful and amazing, and it's yours. And I think that's the most important part. It is yours, and that is beautiful. It might not seem that way because everyone else kind of gets to actualize in some way through the male gaze, where you get to fully do so as an individual, not catering to men. Now, obviously, there's still some level of catering to men. There's still some level of wanting to be partnered. There's all of that. But there's a distinctive way in which independence is required through necessity, right? It is required because it's necessary to survive. And that's the part that is harsh, but also useful in ownership of oneself. So let's hear Candace talk about it on the podcast.
Brother were very vocal about me not being the beauty standard and them not finding me desirable. I'm a lot older now, and I will say, in some weird way, not being desirable freed me up from early.
I always say this.
I watched so many of my friends who either were the beauty standard or who were on the border of that desirability then do everything for man. Every display, every fashion choice, every rave they went to, even the music they liked, came down to aligning themselves for the male gaze. I knew from early on that I, quote unquote, wasn't worthy of the male gaze. So that made me go in a completely different direction. That made me shave my head at like 16, 17.
I was going to say, did it make you like, did you feel like
I was just
the shackles
like,
weren't there?
Oh, you lot don't like me anyway? Right, the party's on. I'm really going to do for me, because I understand that no matter what I do, I'm never going to be that. So I might as well really do a deep dive on the kind of person I want to be or how I want to show up in the world. And I think even though it was so painful, maybe one of the most painful things to learn and understand, now at almost 35, I'm so grateful for that, because it shows up to this very day in the way that I carry myself, my fashion choices, the way I speak. I'm not here to appease to the male gaze of anyone. I really don't care. And I remember when I cut my hair and I was working, my dad was a solicitor and I was a receptionist at his law firm at the time. And I just came in with like no hair. And he wasn't a man of many words, and he was just like, fucking hell. He was like, fucking hell, Cand, because he called me Cand. You're never going to find a fella like that. And I was like 17, and I was like, thank God I'm not looking for one. Boop, dead. And then like I must have been about 20, and we were walking like that same path. There were two offices, and he put his arm around me, and he was like, he was like, you really shocked me at the beginning. But he was like, this is so you, please don't ever change. So even my dad, who was so much older than me, it made him tussle with himself about beauty standards. And because in his mind, he was like, no, a black woman's hair is her beauty. Before that, because of the way my dad lived his life, I'd never questioned me being his beauty standard. His wife was the same complexion as me. She was very plus size. His biggest crush was Charlene White on the news. So I was never like feeling away because my dad seemed to love women that didn't look like me. But the hair thing really threw him. He was like, but I came from a time when doing that meant you like girls. And I was like, and so what if I did? You know, he had to learn so much through me. And him apologizing and being like, you know, this is levels. I was like, well, it took you long enough. It was levels without your opinion. But thank you for recognizing that you had a lot to learn in this situation. And since then, I've never had hair. Like, I don't personally have the time for it.
That kind of freedom is beautiful to me. I know it sounds like a great cost, because who wants to be the child in school that is rejected? So the cost for it is tremendous. It can be social isolation. It can mean, and it does mean a lot of the times, that you have to seek within as opposed to around you. That, however, allows for a ton of introspection and potential for changing the locus of control to being more internal. And that, I think, is the beauty of all of this, right? I think when we think about the beauty standard and the attempts, poor attempts, to exclude Black women, it is done obviously to the detriment of Black women while Black women are still able to transcend the foolishness and become even better and still be the pinnacle of what other groups want to be. And that is where the beauty lies. Even where we have dropped the ball, Black women decided they will continue, and we will not diminish them in an effort to continue to have access to them. We need to be uplifting them, and if we don't do it, they will uplift themselves. That is beautiful to me. That is beautiful. There is one more clip that I want to play because it highlights the importance of finding that strength. And I know we don't like using the word strength as it relates to Black women, but it is an inner strength. It's not the physical strength, it's the inner strength to continue. Even when the world tells you no, you say yes. Saying yes to yourself is strength, and that is beautiful to me. So I'm not talking about strength of Wonder Woman. I'm talking about an inner strength, knowing that you are who you are, and that's amazing, and it's enough. So you get to occupy the space you occupy because period. All right, so let me play this one last clip from the same podcast and end it here. I want to apologize for using so many of the clips from this podcast because it was so good. I didn't play, obviously, the entire thing. There was like 48, 47 minutes long, and I had to cut it up to the parts where I wanted to include because we're talking about beauty here. So let me play the one part where Candace expressed that she had to find strength within herself because she needed to do it for her daughter. So let's play this.
For me in 2020, one that I can't even be bothered to discuss. But I know for me, that was like the final hurdle. There were many hurdles before that where I was growing into my confidence as a person and really believing that I can make decisions by my own and I didn't necessarily always need backup or / approval. But something happened in 2020 that just ripped that right from the root. And so now the version of Candice you see is very much about that. But it had to come in stages. Of course, becoming a mother to a Black girl, that was a new stage because I was like, right, I'm the first port of call for everything, for how she feels about herself, for the conversation she's going to have. I decided to give her locks. I hate the term dreadlocks. She had locks from she was like 2. She then made the decision when she was about 6 to get rid of them because locks are they're not as easy as they look. I'll just
my mum had locks.
So we spent I think it was the whole summer of 2020 unpicking them because obviously she just didn't fancy a shaved head. I get it, she's 6. So literally I was able to unpick like 3 locks per day. Like that's how long this process took. And I think it took us about the course of 7 weeks. And in doing so, in being present for that and helping her literally transition in that way was really, really powerful. But that was also helpful for me about how I want to show up in the world and how I make decisions as a Black woman. So self-love for me is always like that. It's never like too much down there anymore. I think in my teen years, there were definitely whole days, even weeks, where I was just so put upon because God didn't make me light skinned. So put upon because I wasn't a size 2. Oh God, how could you do me like this, Lord? No, just utter depression. Right? Because like, and this is such heavy wording, but that's how I felt. How could you curse me this way, Lord? Why does everyone get to have a good time and I'm the one that doesn't have a boyfriend or doesn't get spoken to? Lord, how could you do this to me? We ain't never been back there. We ain't been there in a hot minute. But I do have like, my dips in self-love are normally now always tied to something happening or rather not happening in my career.
I so feel you.
And not happening based on what I look like. And that's not something anyone's ever going to have the chest to say to me. They're not going to be able to say, you didn't get this job because you don't wear a weave and you're not light skinned and you're not a size. No one can say that now. We're in a PC time. No one's going to say that. But I've been alive long enough to know when something should have been mine and it's not based on what I look like. That's when there's a slight stutter. And I might have 2-3 days of being like, for fuck's sake, man, I can't change this. Actually, that's a lie. I can. And I choose not to.
Yeah.
And why is it that hard work and talent is just not moving certain areas?
I literally said this the other day. I was like, I wish hard work and talent was enough, bruv, to be successful.
Right?
Because why are there the elements of this and that and because it's not fair. Not to sound like a brat, but it's not fair.
It's not fair, and it's been not fair because let's just look at the history of girl bands of the last 20 years. Who's the front runner? Who's even in the bands? The last time I can really look at a girl band that looked like me was Cleopatra, and you gave them 2 years of airtime, if that. And then when the girl bands even disperse, if there was a dark skinned one, where is she? What's she doing? What's happening? Who's supporting her career? That for me is still something I am working on and working through. And it's hard to do that. Not that I would do it publicly. It's hard to even have this conversation publicly because so many Black people don't stutter to tell me, but you've got it good. But you've got it good. And let me tell you something. On paper, having a shaved head, being dark skinned, not being a size 2, yes, me have it good. It could be fucking better. And it really aggravates people when I say that. Yes, I have 1 bag of gold coins. I want 5. Yeah. Everyone then gets vexed when I say I want the other 4. Because again, what they can't say is, but look at how you look. You should be happy. No. I want all the bags. And I don't understand why me even voicing that is a problem. Right. Because guess what? If I looked more like someone else, be like, yeah, babe, support you. Hashtag we stand with you. But because I'm not the standard and you guys already think I have too much, right? Something gets lost in translation.
Yeah, Black women are not allowed to want more.
Want more? When in some areas of our lives, we're even maybe perceived to have more than white women. Don't make them choke.
This is why I say take all the bags. Your education matter, your job matter, your socioeconomic status, all of it matter. Do not listen to these people. I will continue to say that. Keep doing you, being great, let them be mad. Don't sit around, wait for people to tell you, or rather, give you permission to be great. They're never going to do it. Break the door down and go do what you need to do. Collect all the bags, all of it. Leave none for anyone. Take all of it. And also, to conclude, Nina Leakes was right. She deserved to be richer. It is what it is. If other people can be making that money, why can't she? I don't care what you think her attitude is. She carried the entire Real Housewife franchise on her back. I don't know what y'all talking about. She should be richer. Don't at me at yourself. We're not about to discuss this. I love this for her. I love the fact that she's not about to stop because you decided that her skin was too dark for her to be successful. Absolutely not. Keep doing you and don't wait around for these people. Let's be real. If they don't think you're the beauty standard, are they really going to provide the life that you deserve for you? No, they're not. I'm not asking you to answer the question. I'll answer it myself. They're not. You're going to provide for yourself. You're going to live the best life. And when you find someone who is willing to be in love and give you the world, then, and you're in love with them, you can take it. I don't care. But before then, live your best life and do not limit yourself because someone told you that you don't deserve what you have. Absolutely not. Go forward and self-actualize. That's all I have for today. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you again later. Bye.